birthday, kids. What time is it?
Hey, it's Edson at GeekTime TV, and I saw this drop the other day. I just wanted to make a quick video about it. Controversial comic news website Bleeding Cool under massive fire for failing to cover Eric July's overwhelmingly successful RippaVerse campaign. We've covered on this channel. There's been other YouTubers as well that call out these people that just, for some reason want to criticize Eric July's success. I don't know why. It seems like they just because they don't agree with his political opinions or they're jealous or something. But now we're starting to see other comic news outlets do it. This coming from Bounty into Comics. And before I get too much into it, please take a moment to subscribe. It really does help us grow the channel, and we really appreciate it. So let's take a look here. Bleeding Cool is at the center of controversy again, this time for their failure in coverage of the largest crowdfunding comic of all time in Eric July's ISOM #1. Rippa has, as of this writing, raised more than $3.2 million on his comic campaign. Fans and professionals are reacting, wonder if there might be a political and racial bias in the reporting by the salacious comic news website. Well, there's definitely a political bias. Eric July is someone who actually just thinks for himself, has his own opinions, doesn't just automatically go with the mainstream, left-wing opinions or policies or anything like that. So he will he thinks for himself, which is something that these mainstream sites do not like. So there is definitely a political bias in this. The one piece Bleeding Cool published on the RippaVerse includes a passive-aggressive jab at the African-American creator, questioning its price point of a 96-page comic book by comparing it to the direct market retail issues rather than other similar crowdfunded books. The author also made comments questioning Rippa's ethics in the article. Exactly. So, Bleeding Cool, the one thing they do instead of talking about the massive success that Eric July has had in the largest crowdfunding campaign. It's only been like maybe a little bit more over 2 weeks. These are already over $3 million. But instead of talking about that, they talk about how the price point for his comic is too high. But they compare it to comics like mainstream comics like coming from Marvel or DC or something like that, instead of other similar crowdfunding campaigns, which Eric is right on target with. His $35 price point is right on target with other similar crowdfunded comic books of that size and pages. I mean, but what Bleeding Cool did, they compared it to something that Marvel or DC would put out, which might have, well, even the way they're increasing their prices is pretty expensive. So they might have something similar like this coming out at maybe at the $12 price point, maybe a little bit higher. And you know what? To be honest, I'd rather buy Eric July's comic than 3 or 4 or a dozen of the same type of crap comics coming from Marvel or DC. So so he's not even like comparing it to the right comic book format. As a comic-centric website, readers are wondering why Bleeding Cool isn't giving the RippaVerse further coverage on ISOM #1 like it does other comics from the mainstream. For other titles, Bleeding Cool either routinely posts preview images, summaries of the plot points, or covers the milestones of sales that those companies have reached. With more than 30,000 backers, ISOM #1 is posting higher sales than many Marvel or DC comics attain in the stores, a newsworthy achievement. Many will agree. Yes, it is a newsworthy achievement, but Bleeding Cool just starts talking about how it's too expensive, as opposed to actually looking a little bit more into the comic on what interesting characters might be in it or the art. So here's some of the art right now, really great art, but nope, they refuse to cover that in that way. It seems like the RippaVerse should be the biggest story on sites like Bleeding Cool. As it is, few and far between we see independent comics soaring to such heights in sales. ISOM #1 is posting numbers we don't see outside of Walking Dead or Spawn when it comes to books other than those big two publish. Exactly. That's exactly why it's news, that it's gaining such so much so many people buying it. He's reaching levels that a lot of a lot of Marvel and DC titles, especially coming out over the last couple of years, don't even get close to what Eric July is getting for ISOM #1. Richard Johnston, the purveyor of Bleeding Cool, seems more worried about making fun of Republicans rather than covering comic book news, which is crazy because Eric July, in this case, Eric July is not a Republican. He's not a conservative. He's a libertarian. He has, like I said, he has an opinions on about everything. I've heard him criticize both left and right wing politics where they deserve it. So I'm not sure why this person's attacking him. So then he goes on to posting stuff on Facebook. He goes on to this Richard Johnston from Bleeding Cool. He goes on Twitter. And here's one. This is him talking about Eric July. If he said he was a Democrat, I would have written a very similar article. That's total BS. That is not true at all. The reason why he's criticizing is Eric July doesn't just go along with, all the left-wing opinions. He doesn't automatically just go with all their left-wing narratives. And in this case, that's why he's getting attacked by this guy. Fan and comic creator Richard Embry found Johnston's post to be disingenuous, calling out Bleeding Cool and declaring, "If you're about fairness, where's your article about Eric July hitting 3 million? That's huge for a black-owned business." Exactly. Then he goes on. Okay, here's the... Johnston made his most bizarre reply yet to the chain of criticism of his coverage by doubling down on the fact that Eric July hasn't replied to his emails, as if July's responses was the only way he could possibly cover the comic. In response to Embry's follow-up tweet, who questioned Bleeding Cool's author's credibility, Johnston declared, "I have emails in with Eric that is more than welcome to reply to," which is totally ridiculous. So he's basically saying Eric July's now got to give him his own personal attention, answer his emails in order to get positive coverage or any kind of fair coverage. That's ridiculous. That's like some 4-year-old on a playground who doesn't get a certain amount of attention, and then all of a sudden doesn't share his toys or want people to be included or anything like that. That's ridiculous. That's just some he's just being bratty about that. It seems clear Johnston doesn't want to cover Eric July's RippaVerse in a positive light by his excuses he's making to comic readers about his lack of coverage. Many comic readers have piled on in the conversation, accusing Johnston and Bleeding Cool of political bias and racism. Yeah, that's for sure. Some great art here from ISOM #1. And we have RippaVerse creator of Eric July had actually addressed the situation a few days prior to Johnston's meltdown, writing, "Bleeding Cool article attempts to passively aggressively clown on the RippaVerse ISOM #1 campaign in response to the author's own coverage of the news. We always knew that these disingenuous people would be trying anything they could to take shots or delegitimize what we're building," he continued, adding defiant, "They can't stop us." That's right. That's perfectly said, Eric. And I echo those words. People like Bleeding Cool and Johnston, who leads that Bleeding Cool website, are totally being disingenuous. They are not objective at all. They only cover any kind of mainstream news that just goes along with their political narrative, and we shouldn't be giving them any kind of attention. Let me know in the comments. Please leave a comment. Let me know what you think about this, and I'd be welcome to read anybody's opinion on this. And thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.
If you enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up below. Also, please subscribe to GeekTime TV. It really helps us grow the channel. And make sure you hit that bell icon in order to receive notifications every time we drop new content here. You can also check us out on social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at GeekTimeNet. Thanks again for watching. We will see you soon.
Say, kids, what time is that?